Right, now getting into the 10 most effective communication steps that is going to help you forge this incredible bond with your child or children, I should say. Number one, active listening. And you can ask most people about active listening. Oh yeah, no, I do listen. I do listen when people speak. But we are so surrounded by screens everywhere we look. There's so much happening all the time, so much vying for your attention at any given moment. Especially if you're a mom and you've got work and you're cooking and cleaning and driving kids around, and there's just so much on your plate that even when you think you're actively listening, you're probably not unless you've put everything down, literally everything down, and you're paying attention to every word that is coming out of your child's mouth right now. And that is something that I have discovered really takes some training, I should say. And that means literally the moment the conversation starts, the moment you see there's a need for your attention, you put everything down. And if you can't do that, because it is that important, then say, I'm just on a call. Just give me 10 minutes. I want to hear what you want to say. Just give me 10 minutes. Or I just need to finish this quickly because it's actually going to boil over on the stove, or whatever the situation is. Just make sure that the moment there is a conversation, the moment information is relayed, the moment there's any kind of interaction, you are able to give it your full attention. You cannot begin to imagine what a difference that can make until you do it, because just that split second of you putting something down, say, okay, I'm listening, already changes the conversation. It already puts emphasis on all the right things. It already instills the kind of trust in your child that, wow, she's actually listening to me. Okay, now, it's important what I'm saying. It makes such a difference. You cannot believe it. And remember, if you can avoid the fire at all, that is still first prize. The thing is just to try and take action the moment you see there's a need. That is the most important thing. And then really prep your ears. And how you also demonstrate active listening is not just putting it down and looking the person in the eye and actually listening, but then you've got to relay what you just heard. You've got to say, okay, you've got to reflect back what you just heard. So you've got to say, okay, from everything that you just told me, this and this and this is what I'm hearing. Is that correct? Is that what you're trying to explain? Is that actually information that you want to give me? Because we are also in the process, not just listening to what they're saying, but you're teaching them how to communicate effectively. So you've got to show them and demonstrate to them what it is that whether what they're saying is actually come across correctly. That is very important, because also if it is exactly what they're trying to say to you, it reassures them that you did hear them. Or if it's not what they were trying to say, they can try and find another way of saying it, so that you don't end up spending time and attention to what is not actually the case, what they're truly trying to communicate to you, but that you actually get to the core of every situation much faster, much easier, and more effectively. That is very important. Then the next one is empathetic responses. And the tool is here to show empathy by acknowledging and validating the child's feelings. The exercise you can do is, as your child expresses an emotion, to respond with a kind of understanding that says, okay, I can see that you're feeling this. And I can understand why this must be hard for you. Not just like, oh, I can see you're upset, don't worry about it, it's nothing. You've got to try and make that feeling that they are expressing as relevant in the moment as you possibly can by saying, oh, I see that you're feeling this, and you know what? I know what that feels like. I experienced that same feeling when this or that happened. Or I can see what you're feeling, and you know what? I actually remember feeling like that. I do actually remember that. And it was so hard for me. So I really understand what you're going through. That is so incredibly important because that makes everything that you're sharing more relatable for both of you. And then you can also give them the confidence that you are going to show them the exact correct way to respond to that. So that, because until they can do that, they can't master that moment. They can't really take charge of that moment. They don't know what to do with that feeling. So you need to explain it to them in a way that actually says, okay, right, I can do that. Yes, it does make sense to me. I do actually understand how that works. I can do that. Because until they can make sense of it themselves, or they can make sense of what you're trying to convey to them, they won't know what to do with that feeling. So it's very important to them that they see, okay, you are understanding them correctly. This is exactly what they are feeling. Okay, this is the best way to respond to that. And that is how you master every moment. That is how fear is taken out of the equation. That is how any kind of insecurity or uncertainty is removed. It's like, okay, I've got this. I know exactly what you're saying. I can do this. Um, and really, please, the last thing you can do is just to minimize it or make it out as, oh, that's not important. No, just get over it. That's not even a thing now. That is not how you are going to help them communicate more effectively, increase their confidence, and give them the skills to truly work through that situation. Okay, then the next one is open-ended questions. Now, the tool here is to employ the Socratic method to ask open-ended questions that guide your child to examine what is it that they truly believe, are they assuming the correct thing, and how can you encourage that meaningful conversation? So instead of saying, did you have a nice day today when you fetch them at school? Or tell me about the most interesting that happened today. Can you see how immediately you're opening the door to not just um, providing you with a yes or no answer, but to actually think about something and then try and convey that because now they've got a captive audience. You are really wanting to hear what happened. And you know the amazing thing is with girls, you don't have the same kind of story. Literally, as I fetched them from school, as they were still climbing into the car, it's like, Mom, you won't believe what happened today. This one did this, and then that one said that, and then the teacher came and she said this, and then this one answered to that, and then you get this whole thing. And I mean, by the time you've even started the car again, you just kind of had a whole rundown of the biggest moment of the day. And by the time you get home, you manage to hear a very accurate account of everything that happened that day. But boys, it's not the same. It's amazing. There it's like, okay, tell me about the funniest thing that happened today. Tell me about the most surprising thing that happened today. Tell me about the most interesting thing that you learned. You've got to just try and extrapolate as much as possible at any given point. It is so exhausting sometimes because actually you also had a rough day. Actually, you had a lot to contend with, and now you literally have to try and draw it out of them in ways that you can't even imagine. So, but it's so important to do that because you are trying to tap into the emotion of what you just collected from school. You are trying to help them process this day in the best possible way, but they're not offering all the information as freely as you would like to have received it. So you have to try and think, what is the best way that I can possibly get it out of him. And what makes it really hard is if your son gets into the car and you can see he's not himself, he's not his happy self, or he's not the way that he normally is. To then try and get the reactions out of them, to the information out of them, to try and make sense of this emotion that you are seeing next to you, but it's not coming out. You know, sometimes you have to give them time. Sometimes they also just, the moment they get into the car, they don't want to talk. They don't want to tell you anything now because they're actually just so glad that this day is over and they can go home now to their safe space or to a space where they don't even have to think about what's happening next. And you've got to give them that time because you want to make sure that you are geared to deal with whatever comes out in the best possible way when you finally manage to get it out of them. So make sure that all your questions are open-ended so you can't just be met with a hard yes or no. Very important. And try and think, and the more you do that, the more you'll see, okay, these questions worked a lot better than those did, or he's likely to say this or that. So how can I extend the answer to something more? And that is where the next thing comes in, and that is non-verbal communication. Such an important thing to be able to pay attention to the body language, the facial expressions, the tone of voice. And this is why it's so important for you to put everything down before you can have this conversation, for you to really be fully present in the moment and pay attention, because otherwise you're going to miss it. Because sometimes this comes out, but actually what I'm feeling is this. And we need to be able to identify that. And read the room. Don't try and interact or have a deep, meaningful conversation in a red zone. If you can see everything is just shut off right now. Don't try and poke until you get a reaction. Leave that. Give it time. Because once that is simmered down, you can say, okay, I saw that you were really upset and I saw all these things. I was paying attention to you. I did notice this, that, and the next thing. So let's see how you can help yourself try and get out of a situation like that. Because in that situation, there's really not much that can be done. And it's probably an adrenaline-filled moment. Exactly as I said, then all of you is just shutting down, trying to preserve whatever you can preserve in that moment to just get through it into the next one. So try and find ways in which you can then just say, give me 5 minutes, give me 10 minutes, I will respond to you later. It's important that it comes from both sides because otherwise one party is not going to be open to whatever needs to be discussed. So especially when your child is acting out, not just quiet, but actually acting out and having a meltdown. You've got to try and calm the situation down first. And sometimes it's just taking their hand and saying, you know what? I see it's a good time to just breathe together. Let's just breathe together so that you can know I'm here, so that you can know I am definitely present for you, but you don't need to do this in the moment now. But I can see that it would be beneficial for you to just breathe through this moment. And you can take the hand and you can just start breathing. And then it's important to do, it's like a long inhale and a double exhale. Because sometimes what you're finding is they are so busy working through something that they're not even able to calm themselves down in the moment. Never mind speak, but just calm themselves down. Just be there for them. Do that for them. Hold their hands and just breathe with them. And then after you breathe together, done that at least 3 or 5 times, you can go and they can just calm down and they can collect themselves again and, then tell you when they're ready to talk. But if you can just do that and then let them be and they can come back when they're ready to talk, it is going to help them tremendously. Because what in this moment you are actually teaching them to recalibrate. And so that's that thing. If there's a burn, if you've got a burned wound, what do? You put ice on it first. That's the first thing that you do. So this is a little acronym that you can use, which spells ICE it. It means introducing calm eradicates increased trauma. Because the moment you can just get them to calm down in that situation, it's not this thing that needs to burn out to the point where they're so exhausted in the end that they can't even recollect themselves. The moment that there's this meltdown or this explosion, if you want to say, okay, let's ice it. Let's breathe. Let's introduce calm that will eradicate increased trauma. The moment you can do that, you have already won a huge battle. So that is definitely the first thing to do. Okay, then the next one is use I statements. The tool is express your feelings and needs using I statements to avoid blame. So in other words, that means getting rid of words like always and never. And if your child shows up late at home and you've been worried now for an hour or two, I mean, you are ready to just explode the moment they walk in that door. That's not going to help anybody. Might help you unleash a few things, but that's definitely not going to help the relationship. So you've got to say, I feel so worried when you are late coming home and you have not told me, you say. I feel so worried if I try to get you on your phone and you didn't answer and now the clock is ticking and I don't know where you are and I don't know if you're okay. Start the conversations with I feel. Then you're not immediately unleashing all this blame on your child, but they can see how your reaction is actually very warranted because nothing that they tried assured them that you are safe. So it's really important. And you can, it's not just I feel, it can be, I understand that you needed to go and do this and that, but now it has caused this and that. Or, you know what, I support you in feeling that you have to go and do all these things. But now it has brought different things into our household. So we cannot allow that. And just start with everything that you are working through before you are blaming them for 100 things that might not be accurate, or you are immediately expecting the worst. You are immediately assuming that there's something very, very bad happening in front of your eyes. Just start with, I feel, or I understand, or I trust you to tell me the truth because I really need to hear the truth now because everything that just happened suggests that there is trouble. Just start with kind of positive things that are completely reasonable, that are completely thinkable in this moment so that they can see where you're coming from. You're not immediately lashing out and blowing something out of proportion that might not actually be the case. And then it just helps you to get everything across that you need to say in a way that might resonate with their hearts, because that is the most important thing. Both your heart and their heart needs to come out of this unscathed, understanding more and connecting more. That is the most important thing. And then one of the mentors that I listened to when I was learning all these things said, remember, you are supposed to be a lighthouse, not a tugboat. You are this solid, safe, secure structure that is always exuding light, that is always showing the way, that is always stable. So whenever they find themselves in deep waters, they know to look for the light. You're not this tugboat that is always following them, going after them, trying to go and secure them, reel them back in the whole time. That is not a helpful posture to have, because that means, when I get into trouble, oh, it's okay, mommy will come and rescue me, or she's forever looking for me, or she's forever trying to save the situation. That is not what you are wanting to create here. You want to be that sturdy, stable, secure lighthouse that they know they can always come to for whatever they need. But they need to make the effort to try and seek that out and come towards you. Very, very important to remember that. Okay, so we are on point 6, and that is active engagement. Now, it's so important for us to identify and um, encourage and strengthen and amplify the gifts and the talents that we see in our children. And that is why parenting can never only look one way, because your methods are as unique as the child that you're dealing with, based on who they are, who they were meant to be, everything that you discover about them. So it's so exciting when they discover passion that they feel particularly excited about. And so we are often tempted to go even beyond that and try and extend them as much as possible in a drive to really feel this passion. But that is often where we lose the focus, and where things can get out of hand a little again. So it's wonderful to be able to identify that, to create the opportunities for them to really pursue those passions, to participate in that, have fun with them, have glorious moments, create amazing memories as you have fun with them, as you are pursuing this with them, and not fall into the trap of applying any pressure because one day they don't really feel like playing the piano, even though it's their passion, and then to say, oh, but you've got to practice every day, you've got to practice every day. And sometimes that actually kills those little flames inside. I've seen that happen many times, and you can't blame the parent. I mean, sometimes you're just so excited to see something that gets them going. But we have to be very cautious about that. But when we participate, when we are there cheering them on, just enjoying the moment with them, and being able to encourage them to really pursue it with all their heart, I think that's a very godly thing. Because that's why God puts desires in our hearts. Psalm 20 verse 4 says, He knows the desires of our hearts and He will fulfill them. And that is where they come from. So it's definitely, it's a godly thing. And we need to recognize that and not try and feel too much by human effort, but to actually let that thing run its course, provide the opportunities for them to really improve and take that thing further and engage in that and get excited and eat ice cream afterwards and do all the things, but not necessarily take it too far or let it become your thing. A lot of parents live vicariously through their children, and that's sad when you see that, because then all that magic is lost. But also, what I wanted to really share today is for you to see how active engagement in something that they have attached meaning to really not only fuels the good times, but gets you through the hard times. And this is something that was demonstrated to me really powerfully. We lost my parents 11 days apart. My mom and my dad passed away, and my dad was Daniel's hero. My dad was just a remarkable man, and he had a very special journey with Daniel. And my dad was known as Fred Fix-It because literally, whether it was a relationship, a hairdryer, uh, a car tire, a bank balance, whatever it was, my dad could fix it. And he was known as Fred Fix-It. So he was particularly good at doing everything that's required around the house. And Daniel enjoyed doing things with him. That really sparked a little something in Daniel, just the sense of achievement of when you manage to fix something, figure it out and fix it. He really loved that. And that is something that he learned with my dad and he loved to do with my dad. So when my parents suddenly passed away, there was tremendous sense of loss for both of us. And there were days that were definitely harder to manage than others. But on a particularly bad day, I could see that the emotions were just all over the place. And God gave me this idea to find a DIY project, to acknowledge that love, be grateful in the moment for everything that we were able to share with my dad, and build on that. And so we spent that day fixing stuff around the house. And by the end of the day, all that sadness made room for so much gratitude and that sense of achievement. And we had a really great day because we spoke about my dad a lot during that day. We laughed a lot about moments that we could both remember. So it really turned that day into a joy, and a memory that both of us will remember. So it's amazing. It's amazing when we just get involved, when we really pay attention to each other and really put the relationship as the number one priority. Whichever way it plays out, whatever you need to deal with in the process, that's not the focus. That is not the most important thing. But the relationship that can be strengthened from that, whatever else can come out of it, that will enrich that experience and that memory. It's important for us to really remember that whenever we engage in that way. Okay, number 7 is creating a safe space. And this is where you as a parent can really make the biggest difference. It's to provide that space where your child can come home to after the worst experience, after something really terrible happened, after just having an encounter that was not helpful, to come home and just be honest and spill their guts without having to filter anything because they know here, this is where understanding happens, support happens, relief happens, solutions are found, and something meaningful can come out of this. And that is so key. You don't want your child to go and look for that in anyone else's house. You don't want them to go and find that escape or that sense of comfort in a substance or a bad habit or friends. That's not their role. That is not their role. And when you see that happen, that is normally when the imbalance occurs, and that is normally when things get out of hand very fast. And creating that safe space right from the start is really key because research has now proved, and I watched um, teachings on that from one of the top behavioral specialists on earth today. And he said, you know, what happens in those first 3, 4 years of a child's life is so key because if they don't find the connection and the comfort with their parents in those years, they are hardwired to always go look for it elsewhere for the rest of their lives. And this is often when you see teenagers really flip out and not want anything to do with their parents, or just a lot of other really bad things into the mix. It's because of that. It's because of a pattern that was already established back then. But don't be discouraged if you didn't know this, like most people, because it's never too late to really establish the kind of connection that can produce the kind of results where there's a greater closeness and togetherness and a concerted effort to do life together. It's never too late for that. God can redeem anything, but it's important to know that the sooner you start, the better, because not only for their protection and for the way forward for them, whatever they need to pursue in future, but to establish this kind of connection and for you to know that you have fulfilled your role as a parent. You have really taken responsibility for the things that are most key because no one else can have that kind of relationship with them that you can. Um, it was created like that. It was designed like that. So when we step up and really fulfill those responsibilities and really take ownership of that and really put our heart and mind into that, it's it's amazing what you can achieve. And then of course the sooner you do that, the better. And to really listen at first, not to listen with a judging ear or blow anything out of proportion, but just to listen. Because apart from you taking all your preconceived ideas and putting it aside and just hearing what your child is saying, just hearing what are they experiencing, what are they working through, what do they need help with processing, what is it that they really need from you most in this moment? Because they might think it's one thing, but it turns out to be another thing. And because of your experience and wisdom, you will know that if you are actively listening and if you are really providing them the space to just be and get it all out, because then you can do the sifting and you can say, okay, you know what, I hear you say this, but I think just based on who you are, based on what I know about the situation, based on my own experience, you know, this is probably a better result to be aiming for. Um, that is very important, just the listening aspect and being able to honestly, openly discuss anything without judgment. There's enough judgment in the world. Homes are not made for judgment. And that is something I can really say from experiencing it myself, initially getting it wrong in my parenting role, and then realizing, oh my gosh, it's not about that. I don't have to be. I need to be a guide. I'm not the judge. We are not the judge of our children. We are there to guide and help and support and encourage and love and listen and just be there all the time. And when you get that right, you won't need to judge either because they will follow that light. And God promises, train a child up in the way he should go. And that's not according to what you think, it's according to what he says. And that child will not depart from it when he's older. So that is a promise that you can stand on because God is very faithful even when we are not. And that is the key here. The other thing that I wanted to say about that is when we get it wrong in those moments, it causes a lot of resentment and bitterness. It actually does more damage. And that is why it's really important to really harness these times and be that safe space. Even if what your child is saying is completely wrong, and even if the feeling is completely wrong and it's awful, just say, you know what, I hear you, but that's not the right way to react to it. Let me help you find the right way and let me tell you why. That is more conducive to everyone's growth and to really strengthening that connection. The next one is reflective listening. And this is where a lot of what is said can be um, measured against what they are really feeling and what you are hearing. So to reflect their words back to and say, okay, so you are saying that she is this and this and this because this is what she did and this is how, you know, how it made you feel and all those things. First, reflect and make sure that you did hear correctly. Give them a chance to correct whatever is not accurate, what was not their intent, and then help them reframe it. Okay, I totally understand that, and it does make sense, but let me show you how you can deal with this in a way that is going to improve the situation for you and the other person, or just help you take this forward in the best possible way, or respond to whatever happened here and be assured of the best result. Very important because we have so much more experience. We have learned a few things by now. We have really had to face some hard knocks when we didn't have this kind of guidance. So you can say, you know, this is maybe something that I've tried. Back it up with proof. Back it up with, and if that means you need to admit to things that you tried that weren't right, this is a great way to do it because the more honesty and transparency you can bring into every conversation, the more you will receive exactly the same kind of honesty and transparency back. There's no shame in admitting to a fault. There is absolutely no shame or guilt in taking responsibility for something. On the contrary, that's what frees us. That's what gives us the freedom and the power to go and change that situation and help our children avoid those same stumbling blocks. So it's a very, very key aspect of what we need to work through with them. The next one, storytelling and sharing. So important. This is something that I really enjoy doing. And I guess it's easier for a mom to do it with a girl and probably a dad to do it with a guy because you go through all the same kind of phases. Even though we live in very different times, there are definitely elements that are very similar. And so something that I made a huge mistake growing up because I grew up in the 80s and early 90s, and our concept, I mean, that was a time when, you know, a lot of topics were still no-no in the home. It's not something that your parents spoke about. It wasn't it was the opposite of what you see today. Nowadays everyone's just spilling their guts on social media, and you know, it's just they talk about the most intimate things on such public platforms. It's flabbergasting. But back then, you know, love, romance, all those wonderful concepts were not discussed as freely, and there were so many rules and social no-nos, and I don't know. And I come from a very conservative home, so there were a lot of things that weren't spoken about. And so I really took my cues of what first love should look like from movies. And I was enthralled by all the beautiful, wonderful, feel good moments that I saw in the movies. And that was my concept of love. That was my concept of what first love should look like and how relationships should evolve. And hello, that's Hollywood. We know that. Well, now we know that. And, even back then, it's like, that was everyone's idea. Let's just get real. That was everyone's idea of what first love should look like. I mean, the more romantic the movie was, more like, oh, yes, that's what I want. And needless to say, we all made horrible mistakes, taking our cues from Hollywood. And that caused a lot of hurt, regret, resentment, bitterness over the years. That caused a lot of unnecessary brokenness, um, and cynicism and blaming and shaming for many of us. And this is, yeah, so I still see storytelling and sharing as a wonderful opportunity to really convey your understanding of your child and your support for your child and your understanding of a situation, and why, when you find yourself in this situation, you can be fairly guaranteed it's going to turn out that way or that way, just based on what humans go through in general. But I said a few years ago, I was, now I'm trying to prepare the children for what they can look forward to in their first relationships. So initially what I thought is I really need them to understand what is true and what is not. So, I would sit the girls down because we all loved watching movies. So that was easy. So we would look at all kinds of life stories, and I would while watching, I would pause. I was a bit irritating, I think. But anyway, I would see something happen and I would pause and say, you know what? This thing that you just saw, that's not true at all. That's not how it works. That's not the kind of reaction you're going to get if that should play out in your life. And this and this and this is the way to do that. These are different ways of approaching it that will give you better results. Take it from me, been there, done that, so that's kind of the approach. And that definitely helped them. That going through all the different phases, that definitely helped them. And even though my bonus son wasn't necessarily so open to all my opinions, just due to the nature of the situation, he was secretly listening while I was talking to them. Who they were just gobbling it up. They loved it. They were soaking it up, and I could hear him listening. And when he found himself in situations where he really, really needed help, he would actually ask me what I thought about something, which was amazing. And he did that because he knew that it was really my intent to help. He saw me trying to help his sisters. He saw me trying to give them a better perspective. And so even in that way, even though he wasn't necessarily directly involved, that instilled a sense of trust in him that when the pawpaw did strike the fan, he could come and speak to me. And that was wonderful. So there are a lot of benefits to doing it that way. And I love watching stories about real life situations and real people. And because for me, I've always wanted to understand, why do people do that? Why, if I saw reactions that I couldn't identify with, or I heard a story about this guy who managed to do this amazing thing and then he lost the plot, I was like, why do people do that? Because a lot of it is actually to to protect yourself, you don't want, I learned early on, if I can learn a very, very hard lesson through what someone else went through, I'm so much better off for it, because that means that's one pain I could have spared myself. So that I was very open to that, and I enjoyed that. So that is how I could help them and guide them. And that that definitely opened doors to other discussions that down the line, um, were equally important or even more important, just because there was a sense of understanding and trust instilled there. So that I would definitely suggest. But then what happened is, a few years ago, I had contact with someone from my youth, and it just brought back so many feelings. And I found myself getting really emotional. And I just couldn't understand why. I was like, God, because when I was going through all those feelings again, I felt like, God, why? Why did I have to go through that? What did I do that actually invited that into my life? Because I don't ever want to do that again. And I want to protect my children against that. At all costs, that it was just too heartbreaking. And God so clearly showed me all those different moments that I was thinking back to. And He said to me, remember when this happened? I was there. Remember when that happened? I was there. And He took me through all those things. And He said to me after that, I was there, but you weren't looking for me. You were looking for all those things in people, in circumstances, in other things in the world. I was there with you, but you weren't looking for it in me. And He showed me with love, with joy, with peace, all these terms that the world has gone and distorted in ways that are so far removed from what God intended with these things. And He said, find it in me first, and you will not get it wrong. You will know exactly how to identify the correct from the wrong in the world if you find it in me first. So if you find your love in me first, you will not fall for the worldly version of it. If you find true joy in me first, you will not go and look for it in parties and drinking and substances and wrong friends. If you find peace in me first, you are not going to try and look for that in solitude that's going to lead you to depression. It's just, it was amazing. And now I'm speaking very broadly, but you get the idea. It was so, so key. And that's the thing. And so this is probably the biggest lesson that I can tell you today for anything that you've got to work through with your child. For yourself and for your child, make sure you go find that in God first, and then you will not get it wrong. You will not fall for any inferior version of that, because you will be able to gauge that against who He is and His word. Okay, now I'm really getting very, very distracted. But anyway, sorry. Last one, patience and time. And this is just leading on from everything I said now, is it takes patience. Sometimes in not being able to immediately lash out, in not being able to immediately give your opinion, in not being able to try and judge the thing based on what you feel is right, but actually gauge it against who your child is and who they are meant to be. That takes patience. You bite your tongue until it bleeds sometimes. You face the music without reacting or responding in the wrong way because of extreme patience and endurance. But that's the only way. That is what produces the kind of character you want to unleash in them. That is what produces the result that all of you are looking for. And we need to know that, because sometimes we really get impatient. And we want to just help that little process along, because, you know, time is no man's friend, and there seems to be less of it every day. So be very mindful of being really patient with yourself, with your child, with the situation. You stick to the right things. I promise you, it's going to change beyond what you think is possible. And time. And there's a wonderful saying that says, give time, time. And just so I know you will see results for this much faster than you think is possible. But that still means if it's not today, just persist, be consistent with this. Do the same tomorrow, do the same the next day, and the next day, because you are not only trying to achieve a better result yourself, you are instilling a way of being with your children that is going to positively influence all their relationships, all their interactions. So this is something that needs to be built in consistently every day. And you will see the results, I promise you. Tried and tested every single one of these methods. Because effective communication is an ongoing process. It's not a once-off thing. It is how you speak and listen and deal with it every single day. Okay, now I'm really going to need you to tell me if you are for those in the workshop and for those who are going to see this afterwards, please take your worksheets now, go through the 10 points that I've just discussed, and then just answer the questions there. Just think about it for a moment, and then think of how you are going to change based on any revelation that you just had, or based on what I just said, and something sparks like, oh my gosh, yes, I do that all the time. Maybe I shouldn't do that. Or maybe I can get my child to look at things differently, or maybe, you know, whatever the case is. And really just go and answer the like 3 questions. That's all. But just take the time. I promise you it's going to make a difference. And it's going to remind you, look at these things often. It's going to remind you, oh, I shouldn't do that. Yes, I'd rather do that. That works. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I really, really appreciate you being here with me through the first part of this workshop. These were very key points that they will serve you for as long as you are walking on this earth. And that's a lot. And it's going to really make a difference to your children and your children's children, because the more we can teach them to get it right, the more they can pass it on to the next generation. And then all the crazy that's happening in the world, the times that are changing, all the other things that are becoming more prevalent in their lives will be counteracted, because they know the right way and they know the fruits of the right way. They've experienced benefits themselves. So they are more likely to follow that and not get it more and more wrong, as we see happening in the world. Okay, so we are going to take a quick break. And then, first of all, congratulations. Yes, when you've had a chance to look at the list, let me know which of these you feel you are definitely going to implement first, because I imagine all 10 won't be possible straight away. What are you going to do first? Where do you see the most obvious areas of change? And then also how you are going to intentionally try and enforce that. And then congratulations, you're already 10 steps closer to a much greater connection and more calm, and we are going to get back to session 2 shortly. I'm just going to break here so that you can all quickly rush off and get water or go to the bathroom. We will be back shortly. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate you.